What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty Dumbies, your home for the latest and greatest in college football news and action. We're your hosts, Hunter and Tony, and we're excited to bring this episode to you on the eve of the greatest college football playoff ever because JMU and Tulane are going to run the table.
Can't count
But
us out. Can't count us out.
no, you cannot. But before we get into the slate of games this weekend, we're going to cover some storylines that happened throughout this week, some talking points, starting with the coaching moves. There's still obviously been a ton of coaching changes throughout this offseason. Well, not offseason, it's a really blurry line with college football right now. But Southern Miss has hired Blake Anderson to replace Charles Huff. Coastal Carolina hired Missouri State's Ryan Beard, which I think is a really strong hire for them, while Washington State hired Kirby Moore, Mizzou's offensive coordinator from this past year.
Some sneaky good hires in there. I think I'm with you on Coastal Carolina getting Missouri State's Ryan Beard. I think that's a very sneaky good hire with the state or the season that they just had. So, but some more here. Mike Jacobs is hired at Toledo from Mercer. Jason Candle is hired at UConn from Toledo. Tosh Lupoy, I'm saying that wrong probably, is hired at Cal. He was the Oregon defensive coordinator. And UAB has hired Alex Mortensen, promoting him from the interim position.
I really like the Mike Jacobs hire for Toledo. Mercer just had an incredible season down in the FCS. As a JMU fan, I'm a big fan of the let's hire the coach from the FCS level who's had a lot of success. So I think it's a really good hire for Toledo, a team who's always been fun to watch in the MAC. And then here, talking about the MAC, Ohio officially fired Brian Smith this past week. He had been put on administrative leave, and they did not give a specific reason outside of serious professional misconduct. So there's definitely more to the story that we do not know about. So we'll keep a close eye on that. But a story that definitely shook the college football coaching world was Sharon Moore and being ousted at Michigan. Biff Poggi has been named the interim for the bowl game. Obviously, this is a very sensitive situation if you have been following it. He was let go for serious professional misconduct and misconduct detrimental to the team. We don't want to dive too much into it, but it really just shines a light on the last couple of years at Michigan with all of these, kind of head-scratching scandals. So definitely a situation to monitor as Michigan's going to be in the market for a head coach late in the game here.
Very unfortunate situation that's coming out of Michigan there. You never want to see anything for any team that's like this, but we're not going to dive too deep into it. I'm sure most people have already done that themselves, but it leaves an interesting opening here this late into the season where, a couple of names have been thrown out there and, one of them having a game on Friday and, could be determined based on the result of that game. You never know. I'm going to just throw my hands up for now, but it's definitely something you never want to see, but I think it's still a good opening nonetheless. Maybe if they can get to those internal issues figured out. I know the NCAA has launched an investigation on how they are handling these issues and why stuff is kind of just getting shelved for no reason. So, got to figure that out first before, anything major can really come of this. But it is what it is at the end of the day.
Michigan's going to be in a tough spot coaching wise. I think the internal investigations need to turn up something because they can't continue to have situations like this. But moving on here, it is transfer portal season, as we all know, and there has been some significant names to enter their names into the portal. Starting off with Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby. He's going to be a senior. He was really great for Cincinnati. They started off the season really hot. They lost 4 in a row to end the season, but he's going to be a big name in the transfer portal market, along with Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola, who was injured this year. He has 1 year of eligibility left. Obviously, he's a guy people have a lot of varying opinions about, but I do think that he's a guy that someone's going to want to come and have him play for their team because he does have a good skill set.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you there. I think he's going to be a hot name in there. And there's going to be quite a bit of teams that, have their super seniors now and, some of them being in the playoff and they're looking for that guy that they can kind of just plug in and go. And I think he's definitely going to be a hot commodity there. And on Sorsby, I think his decision has kind of almost been made, I want to say, because the rumor is that his girlfriend has transferred to Texas Tech to play volleyball there. So all the signs are pointing that he's going to end up at Texas Tech, which I think would be a phenomenal move for him because we've seen what Texas Tech has done. They're going to need a quarterback at the end of the season, so we'll have to see if it comes to fruition. But the signs are kind of pointing that he's going to end up in Lubbock. But we'll have to wait and see. But another big name that has entered that we all kind of possibly saw coming, Florida quarterback DJ Lagway has officially entered the portal. This is coming after, of course, the new hire with John Sumrall coming in, who has now been double coaching with Florida and then back and forth with Tulane for their game this weekend. And the reports are coming out that he kind of just tucked and ran. Sumrall sat down with him and I believe the quarterback's coach or the offensive coordinator that he brought in, and they questioned him on his motive, his drive, and what kind of player are you sort of thing. And apparently they left a sour taste in his mouth, and he tucked tail and ran and entered the portal. So, in my opinion, these are just reports. Don't know how true this is, obviously, but if it is true, it's not a great look, in my opinion, when a new coach comes in, especially someone like Sumrall, where he is very player-oriented. For him to just kind of jump ship there, because he has openly stated that he wanted to stay in Gainesville, but I guess it's just not going to work out with the new staff that's coming in.
I take those reports with a grain of salt. We don't know what was said in those closed door meetings. How it's reported might not accurately reflect what those conversations were really like. They might have been asking him questions, and maybe him and Summerall just had a different vision of what he could be as a QB, and the reports twisted it. I think DJ Lagway has shown an incredible amount of talent, and he's a former 5-star. He has a lot of talent. His freshman year, he clearly shined bright. This past year, playing through injury, not as great of a year. I think he's a guy who really loves the game, and he will have success elsewhere. So I'm not a huge fan of those reports coming out because I always feel like those are made to paint people in a bad light when you don't know what those conversations are like, and you don't know how someone reacts to certain questions, and maybe they just weren't going to be a fit for each other no matter how much DJ wanted to stay at Florida. But I'm interested to see where he goes. A lot of people saying maybe he follows Napier to JMU. Unlikely. I think Lagway will probably get a power team to pay him a healthy amount. But he's one of the biggest names in the portal, no doubt about it. Another name that's entered the portal is Tennessee safety Boo Carter and Michigan State wide receiver Nick Marsh. Two pretty big names there that are going to be entering the portal with some time left. However, my personal favorite portal enter, maybe not my favorite, but the most intriguing is the better word of putting it, is ODU quarterback Colton Joseph with 2 years left. Man, he lit it up for ODU this year, and he's going to go to a power school and get paid big, just like, Drew Messmaker hasn't officially announced it. Byron Brown hasn't officially announced it, but they're probably going to be transferring. Colton Joseph definitely is, and there's going to be a team that gets him to come and is going to get a real winner here.
Yeah, I think this year, specifically, the quarterback portal pool, it seems like it's just prospering. There's a lot of great names in there, some unconfirmed yet, obviously, like you said, with Byron Brown and Mestamaker, but it's looking extremely likely that they're on the way out, especially with the seasons that they had. Someone is going to pay them. And who knows, maybe, with Mestamaker, he just goes and follows his coach to Oklahoma State. I don't think that would be a terrible jump for him, but you never know. I mean, all it takes is one SEC school to hand him a blank check, and he's on that roster. But it's very interesting. My only gripe with this so far is how USC has handled it. and announcing contract extensions for their players.
Yeah.
I hate every part of that. It just irks me so bad where I'm seeing a college football team announce a contract extension like they're a professional football team. They got people sitting at the table doing the old picture with the smile and the pen and the paper on the table. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like,
could not agree
it's
more.
absurd.
I saw a great tweet, and I apologize, I do not remember who sent it, but they essentially said, I remember when re-signing was just returning to school for the spring semester. The phrasing of re-signing and contract extensions in college football leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. We've talked about it. The sport as a whole has a lot of issues with it, and not many of them are getting solved anytime soon, starting with how NIL is handled, how the transfer portal is handled. So it really just amplifies how a lot of people feel about the current state of the sport.
We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be something that needs to be fixed from top to bottom, and it starts with like we have mentioned, the calendar needs to be fixed. Stuff needs to be put in place, but we'll have to wait and see. But something we're not going to have to wait and see is with Utah now entering a $500 million plus equity partnership with Otro Capital for shared ownership of a for-profit entity to operate their athletics.
This goes right in hand with what we're talking about, where the sport is changing. A private equity firm is buying a stake in a college or a conferences, with the rumors with the Big Ten, as we've talked about. This partnership is going to give Otro Capital is going to give Utah a cash infusion while they receive a minority share of what will be a newly created for-profit Utah entity called Utah Brands and Entertainment, where Utah University will own the majority of the foundation, with Otro Capital owning a minority. But this new entity, Utah Brands and Entertainment, is going to handle all sponsorship, NIL, ticket sales, and other business side items. And the university's argument is that Otro's expertise is going to help increase their revenue because, as we all know, college athletic departments across the country are operating at a loss. And really the only sports that consistently turn a profit are football and men's basketball. And even those aren't consistent for every program. So this is going to allow Utah to keep control of scheduling, hirings, and firings, and handling student athletes, but the new capital firm is going to have a big say in how things are handled by giving them such a large sum of money, which will certainly boost Utah and, their bid to join new leagues or pay more players. So it's I don't even know what to make of it because it is so not revolutionary is not the right word, but so new to the sport. I don't know how to fully process it.
No, I feel you there. It's weird just to say that in general with college sports as a whole and private equity. I mean, it's not something probably anybody could have foreseen, and it seems like we're slowly inching at taking away that student part of the student athlete, where it's just going to be athletes, where it's going to. It feels like we're about to get to a point where they don't even have to technically enroll in the school anymore to play athlete. It could just turn into you're signing under the Utah Brands and Entertainment, thing. And
yeah.
So you're allowed to, I don't know. It feels like it could turn into some form of a loophole where, the academic part of things we already know they're skewed anyway with, how schools do stuff, but it just feels like it's going to make it even more skewed to where they're just not going to have to do any of that. And I feel like that's setting up a lot of people up for failure where, you get these kids where they're freshly 18 and you're handing them a check with a lot of money and they're just not going to know what to do. They're probably not going to be smart, depending on who they're surrounded by. And just infusing more money into stuff doesn't mean it's going to make it better. It could, the glitz and the glam of it could end up looking good, but the behind the scenes could be very ugly. And, if it gets to the point where, we're going to see teams start doing this individually, and then like we had mentioned with the possibility of the Big Ten doing this, I think just opens the door to a lot of bad endings here, and stuff that could end up hurting a lot more than helping, purely because people just see dollar signs. But it's another thing we're just going to have to sit back and watch and just wait and see how this unfolds.
With the conversations with the Big Ten also potentially partnering with a private equity firm, and rumors with USC and Michigan not being on board, this is so interesting to see just one institution, one school do it instead of a conference. Like you said, like we were talking about, this is just so new. We don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know what kind of repercussions this is going to have. You now have a private capital firm that has a vested interest in the athletics, and I promise you, they aren't investing $500 million for fun. They want to see a profit from this, and I'm curious what's going to happen if they don't turn a profit. What happens then? And we don't know yet, because this has never happened before in college athletics.
Again, just another one we're going to have to sit back and watch, because God knows what's going to happen. But, speaking of something that God might know, is Notre Dame obviously still being in the news per usual because of their quote-unquote snub. Wasn't really a snub in my opinion.
No.
But they're, with how things have been handled, Yahoo's Dan Wolken has reported that athletic directors at other schools are considering to not schedule Notre Dame after learning of their memorandum of understanding that they had signed for the playoff, where if they were in the top 12, they are guaranteed a spot no matter what. Again, an MOU, the memorandum, is not a full-on contract. It is not official, legally binding sort of thing, but it's more official than just a handshake deal between two people walking by each other. So there is that, it's that weird in-between gray area of, technically you're supposed to do it, but they might be able to find a way out of it, but then there could be repercussions and whatnot, but whatever. But the fact is that there are talks of other schools just completely freezing out Notre Dame, looking the opposite direction because they want nothing to do with them, because of the fact that they know it could end up not meaning anything if they were to play them, purely because if they get in that top 12, they're in no matter what.
I really can't blame athletic directors or schools for not wanting to schedule Notre Dame if that, MOU is held true. Why would you want to help them get into that position? You get no benefit. You only benefit Notre Dame. And with the conversations Notre Dame is potentially going to have with their ACC alliance, their scheduling alliance with playing a bunch of ACC teams, they might not want to be part of that anymore, considering that they're angry with how the ACC handled it. Well, I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. They're in the ACC for every other sport. The ACC during COVID saved Notre Dame by allowing them to compete within the conference. If Notre Dame wants to be all pissy with the ACC, I don't have sympathy for them, because ACC's helped them a lot. And ACC's benefited from being able to play Notre Dame consistently. But I don't think Notre Dame has the sway and power their fans and administration think they do, or maybe what they used to have 30 or 40 years ago. Teams just aren't going to want to schedule Notre Dame. And if they get out of the scheduling alliance with the ACC, they got to schedule 12 games all on their own. And then you have to have the ability to schedule games that are going to make sure that they have a resume that gets them into that top 12. And if top teams are not going to want to play them, it's going to be really hard for Notre Dame to make it on, if it's not just based off their brand recognition.
Exactly. And, I've seen it turn into, specifically from Jeremiah Love this past weekend and the Heisman ceremony, where they asked him about it. I mean, no ill will towards Jeremiah Love. He's obviously just speaking for his school, as he should. But turning this narrative into they're scared to play Notre Dame, no, there's just no benefit in playing them if it gets to this point where, the pure example of it is, if it happened this year where it was in play, that means Miami would have gotten knocked out and they would have put in Notre Dame purely on a technicality. And at the end of the day, that would have been a horrible decision, because then it's Miami's well, we played them, we beat them. What's the point of playing them? And even though it almost turned into the whole what's the point of playing them, but luckily it didn't. But again, it's not as it should. It's never about this. We're scared to play them because obviously teams are not scared to play them. They play, they played Miami they played Texas A&M again. They usually always play USC. Like they're getting at least 2 to 3 decent to good teams, and it's not their other teams. Like it's not the SEC's fault. It's not the Big Ten's fault that they're scheduling these, they're in that agreement with the ACC, so they're only playing ACC schools, which is very obviously probably the least powerful of the power four here, where it ends up being a cupcake basically because they're getting all these lesser teams, and nobody's scared. Like if you think people are scared, then why don't you start reaching out to them? Like go reach out to Alabama, go reach out to Ohio State, like go see if you want to schedule these games to prove that you think you're so much better than everyone, then go prove it. When you get to these games where you're playing, Northern Illinois, which they ended up losing, you get to these teams that they're playing, and it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, you want to sit here and say people are scared of you. It seems like you're scared of people with some of these games that you're scheduling.
It's such a interesting position for them to be in as an independent where they've made their name off their brand and their NBC deal. I think Notre Dame, you don't want to burn bridges, and I'm thinking that they're burning bridges right now, and teams are just going to have enough of their elitist mindset of, Notre Dame is college football. Without Notre Dame, college football would be nothing. That's just not true anymore. I could care less about Notre Dame in the grand scheme of things. I do not think about Notre Dame in that kind of sense. That's not where the sport is anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's actually handled. I think it's going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors for Notre Dame. I feel like they're bluffing. They're just going to keep doing what they're doing. It worked from last year. They got unlucky this year, or, in our opinion, rightfully displaced. Shit happens. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
It's always going to be like that until they join that elusive conference, which again, not looking likely anytime soon, with the way their athletic director has handled it and stuff like that. But like you had said, this burning bridges with the conference that has helped you, and trying to pull this sort of like threatening motif off here, where it's like, oh well, we're going to do this and this, and if you don't do this for us, then people are just kind of like, okay, sure, go ahead. Like, like you said, this isn't the 50s, the 60s where Notre Dame was the name. Like if one thing has come out of all this is that all of college football fans besides Notre Dame fans can agree that Notre Dame is just a spoiled child, where they have gotten everything they wanted, then they don't get everything they want, and now they're throwing a fit. So if there's one thing that we can all agree on, is that Notre Dame sucks, and they are just not a great team or brand, I should say, and program that is giving themselves any sort of grace here. They're stepping in mud and trying to splash it all over everyone else, when really they're just doing damage to themselves. So this is another thing that I look forward to seeing how this is kind of solved here, and if it does come true where these teams are like, we don't want to schedule them anymore because we're not getting anything out of it.
We'll see how it all plays out. It's exhausting ad nauseum at this point with Notre Dame. Like you said, it's a spoiled child whining. Moving on to this next topic that we both have a very big vested interest in, is these conversations around the Group of 5 playoff bid. Seeing folks demand that Group of 5 schools get denied a spot in the college football playoff, or have to finish within the top 15 or 20 in this subjective ranking in a system already stacked against them, is just insane for what the sport should be. Shutting out the Group of 5 is an unnecessary overreaction to what is a self-inflicted Power 4 team problem.
It's very much a Power 4 problem here that we're seeing, and for some reason, instead of looking at each other or looking in the mirror, they just turn and look at the little guy here, and they're like, well, it's your fault because you made it. and we're just looking back up, going like, well, no, we just followed the rules and we got picked. I mean, it's just like, it's not like they just close their eyes, shuffle around in a hat, pull a name, going, oh, look, it's Tulane. Oh, look, it's JMU. I guess they're in. No, like they followed the guidelines. They did what they were supposed to do, and they got rewarded for it. I mean, just to see these people's, and these talking heads, especially the big name analysts out here, and the stuff that they're saying and opposed to the G5 is so, it's like un-American at this point. Like it feels like you don't want like teams to benefit from anything unless it's one of these Power Fours, aka the SEC. Like it blows my mind that we've gotten so far into it to the point where they're like, nope, it should only be, the quote best 12, but only if they're from this conference. We can take 7 from the SEC and then maybe 2 from the Big Ten. And seeing these people come up with these alternatives and like, oh well, let's expand it to 16 and we'll do 4 from the SEC, 4 from the Big Ten, or three from each, and then 2 from the others. And I'm like, why are you lessening the other Power Fours there? Like it just doesn't make any sense.
It's so frustrating. If you have issues with JMU and Tulane being in the playoff, you don't have issues with them. You have issues with the format. JMU and Tulane did what they were supposed to. The Power 4 teams wanting to diminish the group of 5 is exhausting. And for them to want to isolate and remove them from the playoff is asinine. We're talking about whether it's a good thing to have one spot in the majority of years for a single best team out of roughly 50% of the entire sport. Just one group of 5 team. That's all it is. And people are up in arms saying that's too much. They don't deserve to compete. I could not disagree more. By wanting to include, like you said, the 4th or 5th best SEC team, what's the point of the regular season? You already learned that those 4th and 5th best teams aren't better than the teams in front of them within their own conference. So why should they get a chance to compete within the playoff? You should reward conference champions so you can determine who the champion of champion is, in my opinion.
And it just goes, again, piggyback into the super irritating and just outright lazy take of the G5 should be in their own playoff. And it's like, why are we trying to add a 3rd level to D1 football? We already have the FBS and the FCS. To sit here and be like, all right, well, we're going to have the FCS and then we're going to have P4 and then G5 and then FCS. It's like, let's just go ahead and add that middle ground.
The people who want that are people who don't even cheer for the group of 5 or care about the group of 5. They're saying, oh, wow, wouldn't this be such a fun playoff watching these teams in the group of 5, Tulane, North Texas, JMU, Navy. Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome to watch all those teams play, but they're lying by saying that they would love to watch it because we know damn well they won't watch it. The national media won't cover it. If you think creating a new playoff for the group of 5 will be anything else but the recreation of the FCS, you're wrong. It's just, you're going to find a new way to create the FCS because before you know it, all the top teams in the FCS, the North Dakota States, the South Dakota States, the Montanas, the Villanovas, they're all going to just jump up to be in that group of 5 class because they want to jump up one. Sports are built on the belief and dreams of fans, of teams, and they go way beyond what any trophy could mean. The people asking for the group of 5 playoff will never understand how powerful that belief and dream is, and it's stronger than winning a trophy. No one's going to care about the group of 5 if it's its own playoff. We will because we cheer for those teams, but as a person who just grew up, in college watching the FCS playoffs with JMU, yeah, we love the hell out of it, but guess what? It has nothing compared to competing at the FCS level, and the group of 5 has proven that they can compete at this level.
It blows my mind that we've gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, we don't want you near our trophy, so go make your own. But then damn well that when a team wins that G5 trophy, it's like, well, compete with the big guys and then let's see what actually happens.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose situation for the G5 right now where, we have these 2 games upcoming this weekend where you can already see the headlines if it's a close game or if one of them wins or both of them wins. The headlines are going to be like, well, this shouldn't have happened in the first place. Like, there's no way that, these teams should have played these teams. Like, JMU has no reason to go to Oregon and play, even though they, let's say they win. Like, they would be no thing. And, if Tulane wins against Ole Miss, I already know that the headlines are going to be, well, they didn't have Lane Kiffin, there's the transfer portal implications of all blah, 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 whatever. There's a lose-lose for all of G5 and all of this at the end of the day, where no matter what we try to do or what they try to do or what ends up happening with the changes, because there's going to be changes. We all already know that. They're probably working on them at this very second. And it's going to find a way to just slowly isolate that G5 to where, one, the 2 G5s getting in never happens ever again. I guarantee it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And 2, where they're going to just make it, well, it's going to be like, oh, well, whenever G5 wins, they're going to have to play a play-in game against the first team out. Let's just say, for example, Tulane has to play Notre Dame in South Bend to see if they're going to actually make the playoff. And we're like, well, no, then what's the point of winning the conference? Like, driving away from these conferences. Yes, absolutely. Like, driving away from these conferences is just going to show that at the end of the day, what's the point of conferences? I might as well just go schedule 12 games with 12 random ass teams and just be like, well, that's all I need to do because I'm in a conference, but obviously if I win it, I don't really get anything out of it. So what's the point? I mean, we're already starting to see that. I mean, there was talks of if Alabama got dropped out because of their loss in the conference championship game, the SEC was going to immediately just disband the SEC championship game because they shouldn't be punished. And we're in agreement with that. They should not be punished. Like we have said multiple times that teams should not be punished for losing their conference championship games. But when you have a precedent that's set and then you don't follow it for one specific team, and being that SEC team and being Alabama, that's what causes just shit to hit the fan.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with you. Conference championship games are going to be the first thing on the chopping block because that they're going to change the playoff format, expand it, which is fine. The ACC might remedy their tiebreakers with having 17 teams. Right now it looks like they're always going to be chaotic. But the college football playoff is going to expand. But you got to let people dream. You got to let people hope. You got to let these lesser teams compete because their inclusion doesn't make a postseason playoff a joke. It's vital to the health of the sport as a whole. The most memorable moments in sports are when the underdog comes out on top. If you ask anyone the age of 25 or older what the most memorable game is, one of them, they're always going to bring up Boise State's upset of Oklahoma State. You always cheer for the underdog. And to see this turn into a bashing of half of the college football world at the FBS level is crazy. I want to give a shout out to GFed because he had a great tweet. He said, "It's just sad the college football world is dead set on sending the group of 5 to the Shadow Realm, so 1 or 2 games a year might get better ratings." He's 100% right. They just want games that will do more numbers on TV. That's not what the sport's about. The sport's about competing, and you got to let these teams have the dream, have the hope to compete because they can. And a postseason run of JMU or Tulane making the Final Four will be talked about for decades. If Alabama makes the Final Four, no one's going to talk about that in a year from now. They just did it. You should want to have the potential for these kinds of stories.
When you look at sports as a whole and what stands out to a lot of people, it's the Cinderellas. I mean, you get the occasional, anyone sees a dynasty, 90% of the people hate them because they hate winners. It's just a simple fact. But the one thing that everyone can kind of rally on is the Cinderellas. We love to cheer for the underdogs, and for some reason, it's the exact opposite for this sport where they are frowned upon and just hit and kicked at for no reason, for absolutely no reason. I mean, you look at that Boise State game that when they won that Fiesta Bowl and the fashion that they won it, it's extremely memorable for almost everybody. I mean, it was one of the most talked about things for a long time, and it's still talked about to this day. And, there's plenty of other examples in there. Obviously, me being the Tulane guy, the Cotton Bowl against USC, like, that's still talked about, and it should be, because that was literally 3 years ago. Yeah. And to sit here and say that just, it doesn't happen, no one cares about it, and it's unfair for these teams to be put in those situations. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, what is unfair about this? I mean, we have hit on it on the FBS level. We are playing at the same exact criteria, rule set, and everything as any other team. So all teams that are on the FBS level at the start of the game to the end of the game are the same exact rule set and everything. So there's nothing unfair.
They're the same level of football.
Yes. Yes. So there is absolutely nothing unfair about any of it. It makes zero sense to bring up the unfairness aspect of it when, when the ball hits, when they are setting up for kickoff and they kick off. It is just like any other day. This could be the same game that's happening on a Friday night in a random-ass high school, and it could be the same thing that's happening on Super Bowl Sunday. It's a game of football. The small little intricate details between all that are different, but at the end of the day, it's a freaking football game, and you have 4 quarters to decide what happens. And the fact that people are looking so down upon these G5s, and specifically just JMU and Tulane this year, where it's like, they're like, they don't deserve it. They don't stand a chance. I'm like, you don't know that. Of course, the books are going to tell you that JMU's 20-point underdogs, Tulane's 18.5 point, or whatever the freaking lines are now. The books are going to tell you that, but we don't care about that. I care about what happens as soon as that ball is kicked to when that clock hits 0. And if Tulane has more freaking points than Ole Miss, then guess what? Everybody's wrong. If JMU has more points than Oregon at the end of the day, everybody's wrong. And they're still going to find a way to say, well, it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
These are the same people who would, if you look at the 2008 Super Bowl, they would say that the 9-7 Giants upsetting the undefeated New England Patriots, that's an incredible achievement. But they don't understand the hypocrisy of they're arguing against those same Giants if it came to college football. They would be saying, well, the Giants at 9-7 never should have made the playoffs and never should have had that chance. Well, guess what? That's why you play the games. New York that year was rewarded for winning a weak division. And guess what? They ran the table because winning your conference, winning your division matters. And there's this whole conversation around, well, the talent gap is just too wide between the Power 4 and Group of 5. But it's completely fabricated. Just some stats for you. This year, the Associated Press released its All-American. Of 26 of those players are either currently on Group of 5 rosters or were transfers from Group of 5 rosters. On the first team alone, 9 are either current or former Group of 5 players. That's a third of the first team right there. 5 are former, 4 are current Group of 5 players. So to say that the talent gap is too much is insane, because these are the same power conference teams that get their players each and every year from Group of 5 teams. They build their rosters, they get their stars from these smaller teams, and then win with that talent and say these players were so great, but the year before they're saying, though, that team sucked and that player wasn't as good just because of the logo on their jersey. It's insane. And another one I saw was today ESPN released an article highlighting who they thought were the 50 best players in the college football playoff this year. Indiana had 5 of those players, the number 1 team in the country. Of those 5, 3 of them were from JMU's 2023 team, D'Angelo Pons, Aiden Fisher, and Elijah Surratt, all within the top 40. But if they still had the JMU logo on, they wouldn't be considered like that. But the Group of 5 has the talent, it's just not respected when it has the Group of 5 logos on it.
Absolutely. And we see it year in and year out where these transfers come in and they take the world by storm. I mean, you look at Mendoza, You look at saying, they transferred, albeit they were at power schools and whatnot, but they transfer, they get that opportunity, their names in the limelight. There's countless examples of players transferring from a G5 to a P4 the next year, and because they get that limelight, that opportunity that comes with the P4, they're taken to another level. Just look at Darian Mensah. He goes from Tulane last year, wasn't supposed to be the starter going into camp, comes out of camp the starter, kills it that season, gets his transfer, leads Duke to an ACC title. And now there's the speculation of him going in the draft already. And I'm seeing experts are saying that if he were to enter the draft, he could be as high as QB3 in the draft with a draft that's got some pretty damn good quarterbacks in it so far. So, I mean, to sit here and say that the G5 talent disparity is so massive and that there's zero chance is just utter bullshit, because I guarantee there's many more examples out there of these great players that come from a G5. They're just not recognized as G5 because they make their name on the P4.
Sacramento State running back Cam Skattebo leaves Sac State, goes to Arizona State, and then he gets that recognition. And now, he's going to make a lot of money in the NFL just because of that recognition. There are countless examples of this where players do this, but because of the logo on their jersey, they're discredited until they have what is deemed to be the correct logo. And it's a villainous thing to see.
It's crazy because, like you had said, whenever these players are talked about again and their college days are brought up, they don't talk about when they played for a G5 team. They only talk about the season or two that they played P4 where they were phenomenal.
Diego Pavia.
You look at Cam. Exactly. You look at these players where no one talks about the fact that they got their start at a G5, and that's what made their name to be able to make that jump. And it's not just because the G5 is so much lesser and they would be stuck down there. No, it's because, especially nowadays with the sign of the times, where they're getting paid more money. I mean, it's just more money at the end of the day, and who wouldn't say no to money? I mean, obviously, with some of the figures that these kids are getting, it's like it's a no-brainer. Like, I would, if it was my kid and he said no, I'd smack his head and be like, "What are you talking about? Like, you're going to get paid over $1 million to play a sport."
Arguably the best player in the NFL right now, and you might be pained to hear this, but arguably the best player in the NFL right now, Josh Allen, was a Group of 5 player for Wyoming his whole career. And guess what? A lot of people would consider him at least a top 5 player right now in the whole league. So the talent is there at the Group of 5 teams. It's just respecting it when they're at that level, which isn't done right now because it's all a system to prop up brands.
It's just one of those things that I'll say it and I'll keep saying it again. I don't think there's a situation or ending here that comes out that benefits G5. I think it's just going to keep getting worse and worse for them. They're going to keep getting isolated, and it's just going to ruin a lot of things for these G5 teams that are seeing what's happening, especially this season with R2 being in, and they're seeing what's going on. They're seeing those dollar signs and the amount of money that our teams are getting paid just for simply making it. And it's life-changing money for these programs. And it's just going to slowly dwindle away because damn well that all the high-power execs are like, this cannot happen again. And it's just going to slowly fall out of our hands and control.
The sport is in a precarious position, and the Group of 5 is in the worst spot. And if conferences like the ACC and Big 12 think they're safe, they're wrong, because as soon as the SEC and the Big 10 axe the Group of 5, the ACC and Big 12 are next. And if they think differently, then they're playing from behind already. But
absolutely,
there's only so much we can say about it before we're beating a dead horse over and over again. One thing that is not changing is this year's college football playoff field, which does feature Tulane and James Madison. Tony, let's quickly go over the current college football playoff bracket, just as a quick reminder before we jump into games. If you want to see our full breakdown of the bracket, of the rankings, including our group rankings, go check out our last episode. We really go into details here. But just a quick overview here is JMU at Oregon, Alabama at Oklahoma, Tulane at Ole Miss, Miami getting in over Notre Dame there at that last second swap, which felt very fabricated, but they will travel to College Station to face A&M with then Texas Tech, Indiana, Georgia, and Ohio State getting the first round buys.
Yep, nothing crazy there. We're all looking forward to this. Just a quick reminder, but also a quick reminder on how the dummies bracket ended up turning out. And not a lot of difference here with us. We have our buys being the same: Indiana, Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Georgia. Just with Texas Tech and Georgia flipping there, Texas Tech being the 3 seed. And then we kept the Texas A&M Miami matchup that still ended up with ours. Oregon is playing Tulane in ours. Ole Miss is hosting Oklahoma, and then BYU is hosting JMU. Our obvious difference here is BYU because they absolutely deserve to be in there. I don't care what anybody says, but that's the major difference in ours compared to the committees.
Yeah, BYU, the big one, Alabama being out. We really were high on BYU, so they're in, and they will get to face my Dukes in our bracket. And maybe we'll do a little NCAA 2026 simulation of this bracket to see who would come out hypothetically in a dummies bracket here. But
it's throwing out that word. I mean, this is the only hypothetical we would do is just for fun, just for shits and giggles, just to see. You never know. I mean, it would be pretty fun to see who would come out on top on our bracket.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's jump into this week's games, starting first with a pair of bowl games before we get into the matchups with the meat on the bone here. Starting us off with Kennesaw State against Western Michigan in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. They'll be playing on the Teal Field from Coastal Carolina. The Conference USA versus MAC champs. This is a really fun matchup, and I'm really glad they got to pin two conference champs against each other here.
I'm with you there. I think it's a fantastic matchup here for a bowl game. It's really, give them something to play for here. It is just a bowl game, but at the end of the day, you're playing another conference champ. So it's champ v champ. So you get that opportunity to say, like, well, we're better than your champ, so that means we're better, sort of thing. I think at the end of the day, the bowl makers here really did their thing, getting Kennesaw State in there with Western Michigan. But I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a very entertaining game.
I do too. Like you said, I love having the ability to say, well, our best was better than your best, so how do you like them apples? I think it'll be a very entertaining game. Bowl games matter to us, so we will definitely be tuning in. But, Tony, who are you taking in this Conference USA versus MAC matchup?
I'm going to have to stick with it here and keep going with Kennesaw State. I think they just have had a stellar season here, and they're just going to continue to take it here and just show that, hey, we're legit this year. They had one of the craziest turnarounds this year, and I think it just keeps going.
I am going to have to go against you here and go with Western Michigan. I'm going to take the Broncos here. Shout out to G-Fed. He was hyping up his boys. So I'll roll with Western Michigan on this one, but I will not be upset if Kennesaw State wins this one. It's going to be a really fun one. Taking a look at our second bowl game, highlighting here is Memphis taking on NC State in the Union Home Montage Gasparilla Bowl. Little bit of a disappointing season for both teams here. Memphis being that first group of 5 team in the playoff during that first ranking show, and then sliding at the end of the year, and NC State kind of having an up and down year. But these are two teams I think are a lot of fun to watch. And I think this is a really fun bowl matchup, a chance for both teams to end the season on the right note here.
Absolutely. I mean, with Memphis, this is, again, they were in that playoff race in the American until they just stumbled there at the end. But they got new staff coming in, so we'll have to see what it looks like. And, NC State as well, I thought they had a fairly decent shot there for a while and then kind of just faltered out. But they had some pretty good wins this year. So I'm with you there where I think this is just both teams' chance to kind of be like, look let's just end on a high note. Let's just get this over with and get to the next one to where they know that they can probably do some more damage next season.
I really want to see how passionate these teams play. Little cat on dog action, Tigers versus the Wolfpack here. So, I love this matchup, but Tony, who are you going to take here?
I'm gonna stick with the conference here and pick Memphis. Gotta rep for the American here. But I think this is their chance to, like you had said, end on a high note. Show that the falter there at the end was something that was just like, sucks to suck, but we're gonna finish off strong here and get a pretty decent win against a good ACC team.
I really respect it. I will always cheer for the group of five against the Power Four. However, for this one, I am going to roll with the Wolfpack. I have a soft spot in my heart for NC State and Raleigh. And I do like NC State, and I don't got beef with them like I do some of the other Power Four teams. So I'm going to roll with the Wolfpack. Shout out to all my NC State people. You know who you are. Rolling Wolfpack. Let's go.
I had a feeling I knew you were going to say that. You were going to pick them purely because of that. But moving on to our next game here, the first playoff game of this season is a rematch with Alabama, this time traveling to Oklahoma, and a rematch from earlier this year, which OU had won 23-21 in Tuscaloosa.
Interesting to see the rematch right in the playoff. I'm glad the committee didn't try to position things so there weren't going to be rematches. That's not their job. They're supposed to rank the teams. Whatever falls into place, falls into place. Neither of these teams have a really great run game, so I don't know if either one really has a threat to win the Natty, in my opinion. And I think it's going to turn into a defensive struggle for both teams here.
It's going to be a very interesting game, I think. There's that obvious, implication of the rematch. Is Alabama going to have that slight chip because of how terribly they performed in the SEC title game? But Oklahoma's also looking at it like this is our chance to pounce on them while they're down. They could be looking at it as, is this potentially Kalen DeBoer fighting for his job? Does he, if they lose, is he on the outs? Who knows? But I think this is Oklahoma's chance here to really show that it wasn't a fluke in Tuscaloosa. They got it done that night, and they're definitely going to get it done at home sort of thing. I think it is going to come down to who can establish the run better than the other, obviously. That run game, especially in the playoffs, is very key. It helps you control the clock. It helps you control the game. Gives your defense a little break. You can wear out those trenches on the other side. And, it really sets up, obviously, that play action game and that pass game to where you get them, set up some real schemes there. So, but between these two teams, obviously the key players are going to be your quarterbacks and Ty Simpson, who had a phenomenal season, and John Mateer, who, again, still had a great season. Kind of faltered here at the end just purely because he was coming off that surgery. But a full healthy season of him, I think could have, Oklahoma could have done some real damage here. But I think, again, I'm with you. It's going to come down to the run game. So we'll have to see who can really get that going.
It's a Friday night matchup, so all eyes will be on it. The winner will get to face Indiana in the Rose Bowl. Who do you got, Tony?
This is a tough one. Again, that whole thing of Alabama playing with a chip on their shoulder, thinking that, everyone thinks that they shouldn't be in. And I agree. I don't think they should be in. So I'm going to take Oklahoma this and say Boomer Sooner. I think these campus games early in the playoff mean so much, especially with these really close-knit games. So I think this is going to help Oklahoma in the slightest, but I think they get it done at home.
I'm going to agree with you here. I'm going to take Oklahoma. I think they're going to get their third in a row against Alabama dating back to last season. I think Oklahoma's just the better team right now. Alabama has not looked great the last couple of weeks, especially ever since they lost to Oklahoma at home. So I think Oklahoma gets the job done, and they'll be moving on to the Rose Bowl to face number one Indiana.
Quick little fun fact. If Oklahoma can get it done and win, it will be the first time in, I think, over 100 years that a team has beaten another team twice in the same season. They've done it. Oh,
I think
Alabama
that's
has lost.
specifically for Alabama, though, right? I saw that
Yes,
same
yes,
stat.
I believe so. Specifically, Alabama, and I know people were saying like, "Oh, Michigan beat them twice in a year." This is specifically for the season.
Yeah,
as a
I did
whole.
see that too. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
would be crazy.
specifically Alabama, but if Oklahoma can get it done, set some history there. So
Yeah.
But moving on to our next game here, the first of the 3 Saturday games is the battle of the Notre Dame beaters. Miami traveling to Texas A&M in the noon game. This is going to be a fantastic one, in my opinion.
Two really high-powered offenses, which means the defenses are going to have to step up. I think A&M has been more consistent throughout the season, but I think Miami has a little bit slightly of a higher upside when it comes to their offensive potential. Both teams here are really good. I think this is the sleeper game of the week. I don't think enough people are talking about this because the attention has been on Notre Dame not getting in and not enough about how good Miami actually is.
Absolutely. Miami is still a very good team, regardless of how they got in. They are still a really good team. Purely based on technicalities is the reason why they weren't in that conference championship game, but it doesn't matter. They got in, and they're still a team to be reckoned with. This cannot be an oversight by Texas A&M or any other team if Miami is to advance. This is definitely going to come down to which defense can cause, that mistake from the quarterbacks in Carson Beck and Marcel Reed. We've seen before with Carson Beck sometimes where it seems like the lights are a little too bright and he kind of just falters. He seems to have turnovers in bunches. So if he throws one, could probably expect another one, maybe two, maybe a fumble, who knows. But, also with Marcel Reed, we saw in that massive game against Texas, he also didn't look that great. So, we'll have to see which one can come out on top here with a massive game for both teams to show that, Texas A&M is trying to really prove that they were not frauds this year. Even with that loss to Texas, they're showing that it was just a bump in the road, while Miami is also trying to prove that they are still very much a threat and that the ACC runs through them.
I think the ACC definitely runs through them. There's no doubt about it. They didn't get to play in the conference championship game because of some hoopla, but I'm not complaining because it helped the Dukes. Without that, we would not be in here, and I would not be enjoying life the way I am right now. The winner of this is going to face Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And like you said, these quarterbacks are going to have a big part of it, and I think who they're throwing it to have just as big of a part of it. Freshman wide receiver from Miami, Malachi Toney, and of course, one of your favorite players, A&M wide receiver, Casey Concepcion. These guys are freakishly athletic, freakishly fast, freakishly talented. They're the guys that these teams go to when they need those big plays, and they're going to be the X factors for both teams, in my opinion. And A&M, like you said, they are coming off that loss to Texas, so they're really going to be in a position where they want to prove that, hey, we were a top 4 team for a while for a reason.
Absolutely, and I'm with you in those, specifically with Malachi Toney and Casey Concepcion. Still a great name to say. Those two have been the absolute difference makers for these teams. They're the safety blankets for both the quarterbacks where, if no one got me, I know they got me sort of thing. Malachi Toney, probably the best freshman in the country right now with the way he's played this season. Just
don't
absurd.
Forget about your boy Bear. Don't disrespect Bear Brockmeyer.
I'm not, Bear's been fantastic. Do not get me wrong, but the way Malachi Toney came in and has just dominated the offense for Miami, it's insane to think. I did when I first saw him playing, I was like, "There's no way this dude is a freshman." Like they're actually just lying, but it's insane, and to think that he's only going to get better. Bear's only going to get better is just awesome to see. But both of those guys are going to be just absolute dangers for the defenses. But it's gonna come down to those defenses out of all things. So with all that being said, who do you got in this one?
I like I said, I think A&M's going to come out with something to prove, and I think that they're going to hit Miami early. But I think the A&M that we all are familiar with is, over the last few years, is going to come out. And Miami's going to get this done on the road. I think they pull off the slight upset here, and Miami goes into College Station and gets the job done and wins.
I like where your head's at. It's going to be tough. Like I said, I think these campus games are absolutely huge, and especially with Miami coming to College Station in a stadium that they have never played in, as far as I know, at least recently. And they're I don't know if they're going to be ready for that crowd, but I think I'm going to have to agree with you here and go with the U. Sorry, Will, not going with the Aggies. I think that Miami's defense is slightly better than A&M's, and I'm looking out for Ruben Bain Jr. That dude is a monster. Look for him to make a difference in this game. If he can get to Marcel Reed early, then he's going to have a long night, or afternoon, I should say.
Yeah, he is so good, dude. Yeah, he is another key player to watch, man.
Absolutely.
Sure. Future top 10 NFL pick right there.
Absolutely. But, of course, moving on here to, of course, my game, the Green Wave, getting our rematch against Ole Miss, the 3:30 window game in Oxford, with the winners going to face Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and that will be Tulane, obviously. Rematch from earlier in the season, where we all know was a terrible game for Tulane, probably, which is funny, probably their second worst game. That UTSA game was definitely the worst game. But this, just from top to bottom, that game from start to finish was not good, and I think that's going to be a key factor for this game. Is both teams have the tape from that game. They're both going to be studying it tremendously all the way up until kickoff. So expect a different game from both teams here. Big thing for Tulane: block out the noise. I'm sure they have all seen, and I'm sure Sumrall, of course, is showing these players what people are saying about them and being like, look what they're saying about you. Go out there and shut them up. And big key to that is those big plays early in the game, whether it's, a big third down stop, just a sack, a third down conversion on the offense, or just a big shot play that gets you moving the chains down the field. That's the stuff that can really get the crowd kind of down, a little more mellowed out, and really play into your favor there. Because I know specifically in the first game, there was a little difficulty with some of the play calling on offense because of the noise, and I know the defense has, a little slight advantage, you could say, when the offenses, or when Ole Miss's offense is on the field, because they tend to be quiet when the offense is on the field. But even then, it's still hard. Ole Miss played tempo a lot in that first game, so look for them to do that again in this game to really try and prevent those substitutions, wear them out, make them tired. But the biggest key for me in this is containing their running back, Lacey, and, of course, Trinidad on the ground specifically. Trinidad carved up the defense with his legs in that first game. And it just did not look good on the defensive side. And obviously, Lacey is one of the best running backs in the country, so you got to always look out for him. So it's just going to be a massive game from the defense as a whole. But then again, it's going to be a massive game for the offense as a whole, because in that first game when they had played, both sides of the ball were non-existent. It was just from top to bottom, start to finish, both sides of the ball were terrible. Bayou Jew, Jake Rutzlaff himself, has to step up big time. In the first game, he went 0 for 9 in the first half, ended the first half 1 for 10 on a dump in the last second for garbage time, or right before the game or the half ended. So he has got to step up and get those early completions to get that confidence rolling, because he can sling the ball. It's just a matter of getting in that rhythm, and then got to establish the run game early. In that first game, they were very bad about getting that run game going. Ole Miss had done very well in containing the QB runs that they love to do with Retzlaff, because that dude's got some wheels and some legs. So you got to be able to mix it up here. They did it very well against North Texas in the conference championship game. So look for them to mix it up again here, and to be able to set up those play action passes that we know that they can hit really big plays. Shaz Preston and that whole wide receiver committee.
I am really excited to see this game. I picked Tulane to beat Ole Miss earlier this year. Obviously, those fruitions did not come to pass, but we get a second chance for the Green Wave here. I think you hit the nail on the head. they have to block out the noise and get those big plays to quiet down that Ole Miss crowd at the SIP. That's going to be crucial, and to do that, they got to get that run game going. Retzloff has to be able to move the ball consistently and not fold when his team needs him to step up here. It is going to be a historic day for Tulane if they can get that ground game going.
Absolutely, and I think it's always going to start with that, and with any of these teams here, with you get that ground game going early, you're setting yourself up for success. You're helping your offense, you're making the play call easier, and you're keeping the defense on its toes too, because these disguised plays that they can come up with are very good, but it's going to come down to it. As long as it's not a replication of that first game earlier in the season, then I think we got ourselves a shot here. And it's hard to beat a team twice in one season. It's going to be a different game plan on both sides, but I am really looking forward to this, and I think it's just going to be a fantastic game from start to finish.
It's going to be an electric day for both of us. And Tony, I don't even think I need to ask, but who are you taking in this one?
Roll motherfucking wave, baby.
I am going to roll with the wave here. I'm going to support our group of 5 guys. I thought about being the hater, but I did not want the bad karma. I'm rolling with the wave here. I'm all about it. Let's go Tulane.
Absolutely. It's going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it. I just need this week to be over with so that we can just watch these games, because I'm just antsy and excited, and I can only imagine what the players are going through as well, finally being able to do this. So.
Yeah, how I feel, I can only imagine how these guys on all the teams feel leading up to this weekend. But the game that I have been waiting for, JMU traveling to Eugene to take on Oregon Saturday night. This is the biggest game in JMU's history, and it starts with handling the crowd noise. There's going to be a lot of repetition here for JMU, just like you said with Tulane. We have to handle the crowd noise, and we cannot start slow. If you start slow, you're going to let that crowd eat away. You got to hit them fast and early, and you cannot be afraid to use the whole playbook and use Alonzo Barnett's legs when you need to. There's been times this season when we've been almost hesitant to cut him loose and let him run. He is the best, and the offense is the best when you get him moving north and south and let him make plays with his legs. He is explosive, he is fast, he is athletic, and you need to let him be that way. This, I cannot overstate it enough, how big of a game this is for JMU. And I think the highlight of the past week and a half has been the conversations on social media between JMU and Oregon. It's been trending nationally.
Phenomenal.
These two fan bases have, against all odds, when they're supposed to be at each other's throats, we have become best friends over our shit talking of each other, because it has just gone so well. I am so excited to see how this game goes, and I'm so excited to see the Oregon fans jump on the JMU bandwagon after Saturday night.
It's going to be so entertaining, purely just because of the meme aspect and everything that has come out of JMU sports Twitter and Oregon sports Twitter is just phenomenal stuff here. I mean, I am cackling audibly seeing some of this stuff, and it's just fantastic. And I'm sure the game is going to be just as good, because we all know, especially this, JMU's defense is legit, and they have a real chance here at showing, we deserve this, and we're not, everybody. I think a lot more people are writing off JMU than they are Tulane, because JMU kind of had that, help to get in. But that's something that you can use, and like I had said for Tulane, where I guarantee that they're seeing all this and they're realizing this is our chance to show that we deserve to be here and we absolutely belong. And I am really looking forward to this, especially having the chance to. A team like JMU having the chance to go out to Oregon is not something that happens often, so I'm sure they're all going to take it in. It's going to be fantastic, and then once that game starts, they're going to be locked in and ready to roll. So, of course, like with me, sure I don't have to ask you, but who you taking?
Well, man, like you said, it starts with the defense, and that's going to start with Shahir West and Trent Hendrick getting the ball rolling. And you know I'm going to take the Dukes. You know JMU's going to come out top. Go Dukes, baby. And it's going to start with those two guys on defense, and most importantly, Wayne Knight, the monster that is Wayne Knight. If you don't know him, you will find out about him Saturday. He was one of the best backs in college football, hands down. He is phenomenal. And I just want to share a quote from him that I think sums up how JMU feels perfectly. People who are saying that JMU does not deserve to be in the college football playoff don't watch JMU football. They don't understand the brand that we have here and the kind of talent that we have here. And he could not be more true. JMU fans are extremely passionate, and I think that's going to show out on the biggest stage come Saturday. But Tony, who are you taking?
I think with this opportunity, with JMU getting to go to Eugene and experience this, be in a playoff for the first time, I think, it's going to be a lot for them to take in. It's the same with Tulane as well, but I'm sticking with the G5, boy. I'm sticking with the Dukes.
Yes, sir. That's my guy.
I think the Dukes come home with a duck in the dog's mouth. The Duke dog is coming home with the duck, and they're going to finish them. I think it's going to be on the back of Wayne Knight. He is going to absolutely carry this team. We saw what Ashton Genty did to them last season. I think Wayne Knight has the opportunity to do the same in this game. So I am really looking forward to this. We got some fantastic games going on, especially two of them specifically being our games that are going to happen this week. So let us know what you guys think. What are you guys looking forward to with all these games? What other bowl games are you looking forward to? Because there's a lot of interesting ones out there that are going to be coming up in these next few weeks. What are the other storylines that are going to be worth watching out here? The portal's kind of looking, a lot of stuff's going on here with some unconfirmed and confirmed stuff. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok at Dynasty Dumbies. Feel free to follow our personal Twitter accounts as we continue the banter on Twitter and defend the G5 with our lives at Hunter_Shaw5 and at CronyTony20. And we will see you all next week after our teams come home with the dub.
Go Dukes, baby.
Roll wave.